Chair, I want to speak about two particular parts of, or clauses in Part 1. That's Clause 13 around alternative holidays and Clause 14 around proof of injury or sickness. In doing so, when I spoke on the second reading on this bill, I talked about this bill being unjustified, unnecessary, unbalanced and unfair, and I'm going to measure these two provisions against that. Now, I was mentioning earlier a very good submission, a very short but very good submission made by a man called Dennis Hickey, who is a bus driver for Howick and Easton in Auckland. And Dennis's submission was, and he obviously cares very strongly about his job, and he believes he's there to provide a service to the public. He recognises that on public holidays, if he's rostered on, he's going to work. He also knows that if it's an ordinary day that he normally works, he will get what is commonly called a day in lieu, and in this bill referred to as an alternative holiday. What he was telling us was that that system is fair as it currently is. That basically if he works Christmas Day, and he has done that in the past, then he will get a day in lieu. He recognises, though, too, that he is losing something by working on Christmas Day, and that, of course, is the ability to spend time with his family and friends and enjoy a day off that most other New Zealanders will be having. However, he accepts that he's there to do his job and provide that service, and he does it. He gets another day off in lieu, and that's always worked perfectly well for him, and he's been able to choose a day that means that him and his wife and his children can spend some quality time together. Now, the issue is that what's being changed here, and let's be clear, we're not talking about whether people are flexible or not, as the previous speaker said. What's being changed is who gets to decide. So, as it exists at the moment, Dennis and his employer at Howick and Easton can agree when he'll take his time off, and it sounds like in most cases they do, in fact, do that. But if they didn't, then ultimately Dennis, as the person who's given up his Christmas Day and time with his family and friend, would be the one who got to decide what day he would have as a day in lieu. What's provided for in this bill is that, in fact, it will be up to the employer. That if there's no agreement, the employer will decide. And the case, or the example that Dennis gave, would be the situation for somebody like him if he got a Wednesday off in the middle of March for working on Christmas Day. And his wife works on a Wednesday and his kids are at school on a Wednesday. And it has no value for him, and it's not a good alternative holiday to the day he actually worked. So that's the point that's here. This is an incredibly mean-spirited change. There was no evidence of the need for change. Basically, the Department in the Regulatory Impact Statement considers that the issue of an employee choosing when an alternative holiday is taken is limited to a few employers. Less than 10 submitters to the group said that employees should not be allowed to choose when alternative holidays are taken, i.e. this is another solution to a problem that doesn't exist. We're getting a bit of this at the moment. It's just a ridiculous, unnecessary provision. Now, the Department's advice to the Select Committee was, on this matter was, this change addresses, so we had submissions. The overwhelming majority of submitters were opposed to this change. And the high quality, if you want to actually, there was very little evidence. And Michael Woodhouse gave an example before of an occasion where somebody submitted on a real life example. However, most of them went like this: allowing employers to direct when alternative holiday must be taken. Business New Zealand supports the proposed amendment, full stop. Well, that's hardly compelling, is it? That's hardly evidence that there is a problem. However, the Department officials came back to us and said this change addresses concerns that the current arrangements can have a negative impact on business operations and productivity if employees choose to take an alternative holiday on a day that is not convenient for the operation of the employer's business. Well, that's fine. But equally, one could say that it wouldn't be very good and it would have quite a negative impact if, in the case that Dennis gave us, he was given a day off when his wife was working and his children were at school. So it has implications for the workers. And after all, the worker in that case was the person who gave up a day of national significance, a day that mattered to him and his family. So I say to those opposite, Genuinely. This is mean-spirited, but you can fix this. And we have got an amendment.
I call Keith Locke.